everyone. It's great to be here. My name is Anika Jones, and I just want to share a little bit with you about how we got started with the End Mass Incarceration Georgia Network. The reason that we started the network was we were determined to end slavery in the United States. Does that statement come as a surprise to anyone? Because actually, we recognize that with the passing of the 13th Amendment, which forbids slavery in the United States, except as a punishment for crime, where the party shall have been duly convicted. And that loophole in the 13th Amendment has led us to where we are today in the situation that we call mass incarceration. Just briefly, and if you can get the video ready, because so it'll be ready when it gets. What we recognize is that in this country, there's been, since the official abolishment of slavery, legalized slavery, there have been a series of events in this country that have followed up. Following slavery, there were Jim Crow laws that discriminated and allowed for segregation for people of color, particularly people of African descent. And leading up to once the Jim Crow laws and segregation was legally abolished, we then moved to what we call mass incarceration, which is another legalized way of having slavery. So right now, just to really go over that, in case this might be new for some people, I wanted to share a brief video by Michelle Alexander, who wrote this book, The New Jim Crow. You may be familiar with it. And she carefully details this process.
Throughout American history, African Americans have repeatedly been controlled through systems of racial and social control that appear to die, but then are reborn in new form tailored to the needs and constraints of the time. You know, after the collapse of slavery, a new system was born, convict leasing, which was a new form of slavery. And once convict leasing faded away, a new system was born, a Jim Crow system that relegated African Americans to a permanent second-class status.
Whoops.
And here we are, decades after the collapse of the old Jim.
But we can see, and you actually have a handout in the folder that was given out that really documents a detailed timeline of how this has happened. And that's where we are today. That's exactly where we are today. So, you know, we recognize that the work everybody here is doing is very important. It's very important. It needs to be done. We need the dedicated, committed persons like yourself, and also myself. For the past 20 years, I've been working with women transitioning out of prison, going back into the community. So we need people providing services and programs. We need people on the advocacy level. You hear more about changing policies and laws. And all that's important. But if we're going to really make a difference to end mass incarceration, to end legalized slavery that still exists in this country, it's going to take more than the programs. It's going to take addressing the stereotypes, the attitudes, the myths, the shame, bringing awareness. And it means, like I know right now I am, quote, what they say, preaching to the choir, but what it's going to take is for us to reach out into our own personal networks, into our families, into our our communities, our faith communities, our social and civic clubs, to bring awareness to people that, quote, prison ministry is not just for a dedicated few people who go into the prison or the jail once a week or once a month, but it's something that we all have to be aware of to change attitudes in this country. And so with that, I want to have Tammy just speak briefly about what the network is about, because it's got to start with everyday people involved in all aspects of society.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tammy Boyd, and I'm not going to really go through kind of the mission, purpose, belief statement, and action statement, because you have that in your handout, so you can kind of read through that. I think it's more important to talk about what we do and the action that we take. 3 things: we educate, communicate, and advocate. So first, education. We provide information to the community about issues surrounding juvenile and criminal justice, and the organizations and agencies that support those that are re-entering. We communicate. We communicate the importance of being involved in the juvenile and criminal justice system reform. There's a quote by Brian Stevenson that's one of my favorites, and it is that each of us is more than the worst thing we've ever done. And so we want the community to know that when these folks come out, that we need to open our arms, and we need to love them and hug them and treat them with the respect and dignity that they deserve. And the third is advocate. And so what we do is, I think once or twice a year, we go and we meet with our state legislators, and we talk about the laws and the laws that affect those that are re-entering. We talk about the laws on the books, right, and how that affects those that are incarcerated and those that are re-entering. On the back of your handout is a calendar of the sessions that we have each month. We meet monthly on Monday, the last Monday of each month, at the Atlanta Community Food Bank. And just a couple of topics that we've covered. One was the intersection of behavior and mental health and the juvenile and criminal justice systems. One of the other ones that was a very lively discussion, from what I understand, I missed it unfortunately, but was racism, discrimination, and implicit bias in criminal and justice systems. And then in October, Anita is going to be our featured speaker, and we're going to talk about the anatomy of reentry. So those are just a few of the topics, and you can look through those. So we welcome you to join us. We'd love for you to come out. We do feed you as well, so please come out and see us the last Monday of each month from 12:30 to 2 p.m. Thank you.
So good afternoon, my name is Pamela Perkins-Carn, and so glad to be here. Thank you, Anita, for coming to the expo, and you too, definitely. And lively discussion there, and so we're glad to be back with some of you who were there at our expo. One of the things Anika mentioned is, of course, was the change in how we see ourselves, how we see each other, how we see our fellow human beings. And when we talk about incarceration or prison, oftentimes the words convict and felon, and those are the words that we use to describe people, and those are ex-offenders. We attach those labels to people, and you never get them off. And so one of the main parts of our program, our effort in creating this network, was also to generate that discussion that needs to take place. It's that uncomfortable discussion that we need to have with our family members, within our churches, with synagogues, mosques, masjid, whatever your faith community is. It's one of those uncomfortable conversations we need to have in our workplaces with those who have a profession within the criminal and juvenile justice systems. It is the conversation we need to have. And that is, why are we so ashamed of those or ourselves who have committed an offense or committed a crime? Where does that shame come from? And why can we never let it go? What happens to restoration that we profess to believe in and yet it is never offered, or is offered conditionally. It is not freely given. So these are 7 questions that are part of those of you who are part of the healing communities, these are those 7 questions of reflection that we always ask to generate that discussion. Am I, and one of the little caveats in there, one of that first question is a person of faith. So if you profess to be a person of faith, just put that in there. Am I ashamed of my own family member, friend, fellow congregant who is incarcerated or who has been incarcerated or who is on the cusp of being incarcerated? If so, what am I ashamed of? Where is that coming from? Number 2, why are we so ashamed of those who have committed a crime in our communities? And what is it that we are afraid of and why? My background has been in juvenile justice advocacy, child advocacy. And throwing away our children has been the hardest thing for me to get through. You don't get through it because you keep advocating for stop throwing away our children. Because once we tell them this is who you are, once we give them that label of juvenile instead of child, instead of little boy, little girl, daughter, son, granddaughter, grandson, nephew, niece, once we start calling them, you are a juvenile, juvenile, whatever way you pronounce it, that removes them from the human race. They lose their humanity. It's the stigma that we attach. And the same is with the adults. So once we begin to ask ourselves these questions seriously and really, really have the discussion of what are we afraid of, what are we ashamed of, and why? And why is it okay to have 2.2 million people locked up? Why is it okay that Sesame Street had to have a special feature for children on incarceration? Because we have so many children in America whose parents are locked away. When we get to the point that Sesame Street has to create a special feature to explain incarceration, haven't we reached the limit? Haven't we gone beyond the limit? And so for en masse incarceration, as Anika said, there's a movie called 13th, and one of the quotes in there is that even when you're released, you're still not free. And that's why it's still called slavery. You're still not free. You're still not a full citizen. You still can't vote under certain circumstances. You still can't get a job, certain types of jobs. So we have come together. We came together 7 years ago, probably longer than that. And we have been
almost 10 years.
It's always been 10
We've been
years.
working together.
Right. In raising awareness of this issue, of this circumstance, of this condition that we have. And how do we work together? How do we use that love that we profess to have from heart to heart and breast to breast in ending mass incarceration? And so we thank you. I thank you for giving me an opportunity to address you today. Thank you so much for the work you're doing, and God bless you.
I just want to say one more thing. Pam, you need to.
Yes,
once I
we will
finish,
do that.
you have to ask. Yeah, is that it's really, if there's anything that I could just leave upon anybody's heart, mind today, is to realize that to make a difference, to change the things that we're all here working for, it is going to take us really stepping out and making this not just the work we do or our ministry or our volunteer, which is important, please. I mean, we couldn't do it without that. But it's going to take it being a part of our everyday lives. I spend almost as much time as I do advocating for persons, trying to convince others, like in my church and in my community, that they should care, as opposed to just being afraid or writing kids off or writing people off. So it's going to be important for all of us to take what we do to reach out through all aspects of the society, because it's a mindset, and that's what it's going to do to change.
Amen.
And now, Pam, you can.
Yeah, we have, yes, part of our, as Tammy said, part of our initiative is advocating. Yeah. And so we do ask for your support along with other groups who are also asking the governor to reinstate, reauthorize the Criminal Justice Reform Council. If you did not know about them, that was a great council that did a lot of great legislation. That's where criminal justice and juvenile justice reform came out of. And so it's a group of people from across the state who sat and worked together. Judge Boggs led that council. And so we would love for the governor, our new governor, to reauthorize that in the 2020 legislative session so that we can have more forward movement in Georgia. Georgia became a national model, you know, for the past 8 years. And so we want to, and actually this came out of the criminal justice reform, this gathering right here. So we hope that we can get, along with several others who are advocating for the same thing, the reauthorization of the Criminal Justice Reform Council. And so call the governor and let him know. Thank you so much for already doing it. But we do need that council back. We know that when everyone comes to the table, we do better.
That's right.
And so thank you so much for that. And it's on our website if you need more information. It's emigeorgiaganetwork.org. Okay, great.
Awesome.
Yes.
Stay, one of y'all stay. Does anybody have any questions? We have some time here if there's any questions y'all have for these ladies.
I'm puzzled by one aspect of your movement. You seem to, and not just you in general, just the conversation doesn't shine any light on the effect of fatherless homes and what that has on men in incarceration. Besides the system, people make choices that maybe not involve the kids, but choices that were made to bring them into existence, and therefore it's a domino effect that brings them to the situation. That seems not to be in conversation at all, which I'm kind of curious, not just with you, but in society as a whole.
Absolutely. You know, the research has shown that if a child has a parent who's incarcerated, then they are about 70% more likely that they're going to end up in the system themselves. And so you're absolutely right. Also, as I said, I've been working for almost 20 years now with women, and even though there's a smaller percentage of women who are incarcerated, the numbers are increasing just exponentially in comparison with men. And the fact of the matter is, most women who are incarcerated have minor children at home. And it's often, you know, the mother who has been the one or who has tried to be the one in terms of keeping the families together. So that impacts so many children. So you're absolutely right. Yeah, and as you know, as we say, when you have a person, whether it's a father, a mother, or a child, which we are seeing children, I don't just mean juveniles and adolescents, we're now seeing children who are being arrested and taken out of schools for behavior. The whole family is incarcerated with them.
Yes, absolutely. The impact that poverty has on families, whether it's poverty for the substance abuse, whatever that condition is that causes the parent, the adult in that child's life, to not be as able to care for that child in the way he or she needs, or causes commits an offense that causes that individual's commitment to the justice system. All of that is not happening in a vacuum. And so fatherless homes are not just about somebody making a choice, I don't want to be at home with my children. We have to have deeper conversations, and we have to start looking at solutions that work, solutions that are fact-based, that are research-based, that are understood about different communities respond differently. Right. There is no cookie cutter solution to everybody's situation, but we have to look at culture, we have to look at historical context, we have to look at how laws are applied in different circumstances to different communities. All of that has an impact. We don't live in a vacuum. Everything has, there's the statement that I think it was either Dr. King or Nelson, Dr. King, we are inextricably tied to each other. So what happens to me eventually gets over to you. And so therefore, if there is a fatherless home, that home is not just going to, the circumstances at that home will not just stay in that home. It will
Right.
travel to the school. It will travel to the community. It will travel to the church if there is one in that community. It will travel to the larger part of that community. Because until and unless we believe and begin to become community, we will continue to have these issues. We will continue to have the need to have gatherings. It was something that I think Pamela said, is that this will not stop until we stop it. And so until we see fatherless homes as a great issue in this country to address, we will continue to have fatherless homes for various reasons. And those reasons are not ever going to yield the positive we need for our children. So thank you for your question. It's another one of those uncomfortable conversations that we need to have.
Matt?
Yeah. Did you guys say something that you're having an event coming up or a conversation coming up?
Yes, it's September.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually September 23rd.
Yeah, the meeting that we have on September 23rd is the idea of the parental and community engagement, the mutuality of obligation. How are we mutually obligated to each other to make this work?
Together, yeah.
That's the Atlanta food.
At
At the Atlanta Community Food
Yes,
Bank.
it's on the back of this sheet.
On the sheet. Are there other questions, comments? I'm seeing some interesting expressions on people's faces. And I'm curious what you might be thinking.
And curious expressions are fine.
Yes.
Unless we.
How large is your organization right now?
Okay, well, first of all, it's a slight difference. It's a network, which we may not have explained in detail. The network is made up of individuals, of organizations, of faith groups, and it is interfaith. So it is highly represented by church groups, but we also have participants from other faith groups, from the Jewish community, from the Islamic community, and just from individuals who care. So it is not officially an organization, it's people who come together because we care and want to do something, and we support each other's initiatives. So attendance at the network meetings may range anywhere from 15 to 60 or 75, depending on what the topic or what the issue is that we're doing. But it's a matter of being committed to continue.
Where are your network meetings?
Okay, and the meetings are all held at the Atlanta Community Food Bank, which is on Joseph Lowry in the city of Atlanta. You had a comment, yes.
You know, the stigma that you speak about, as a member of the body of Christ, I'm reminded of people that have gone to jail, like Joseph, who saved his family and his nation, like Meshach, Shadrach, and the bad Negro. Thrown into the fire and did great work for God. Like all the disciples went to jail.
That's right.
And even Christ did a day and came out and saved the world. And there's people that are coming out of jail, like Pamela Hillman, that's doing great work for God. You know, and as the body of Christ, we have to show forth those type of individuals to change the way we view people who pay their debt to society and who sometimes don't even owe society
Right.
and are incarcerated. You know, and I just thank you for the great work that you do.
Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Don't forget about Billy Joe and Amigo too.